Hi! Happy 3-day weekend, everybody! Very exciting. Today we are going to be adding and subtracting with fractions. Okay? Alright, let's start. Alright, let's try something very simple. And then we'll just go a little tougher on you. So let's say we have 1/8 plus 5/8. Now I always think it is super duper duper important to estimate, because that's working on your number sense. Okay? So let's first, before we even find the real answer, which maybe you think you already know, let's first get an estimate. Alright, so how the heck do we do that? Well, I know in class that you guys are super good at finding halves. So if we look at this one and we say more or less than a half, do you think it's, so let's go to certain benchmarks of, do we think it's closer to 0, closer to a half, or closer to 1? And the reason why I'm going between 0 and 1 is because 1/8 is a fraction. So it's going to be less than 1. Alright, so half of 8 is 4. Half of 8 is 4. That would be 4/8. But we're not working with 4/8. We're working with 1/8. So the question is it closer to 4/8, which is a half, the half mark? Is it closer to 0, or is it closer to 1? Well, we know it's less than half. So it's somewhere in here. So is that 1 closer to 0 out of 8 or 4 out of 8? Well, it's closer to 0. So pretty much if we were estimating this, I could say that that front number is pretty much just 0. It's pretty much nothing. And that number's like, what? I'm worth something? You're like, sorry, I'm estimating. Sorry. Okay, this one's a fraction, so it's going to be in between 0 and 1. So let's see what we think here. Do we think it's closer to 0, a half, or 1? So again, half of 8 is 4. It's over the 4/8 mark. But is it closer to 8 out of 8, which is 1 whole amount? Well, 5 is closer to the 4, so it's about right here. So we're going to say that's closer to a half. So when we're estimating, I'm going to say that's about half. So our estimate, EST, is 0 plus a half, which is a half. When we add these fractions together, we should get something that is close to a half. Otherwise, we are doing it wrong. All right, let's try. So to actually get the real answer, well, when I'm working with fractions, I have to make sure that I'm working with the same fractional amount. And in this case, I'm working in eighths. So if I'm working in eighths, I'm saying, okay, I have 1/8 here. I have 5/8 there. So how many total eighths are there? So 1 plus the 5 is 6. I have 6/8, which is less than 1 and close to my estimate of a half. Now some of you who are super amazing might be like, well, Miss Heberly, you could really reduce 6/8 by dividing those both by 2. And you end up with the simplified equivalent fraction of 3/4, which is exactly in the middle of a half and 1. It's right there. So there's our answer of 3/4. Now let's try something a little tougher before you leave me today on your 3-day weekend. How could it get tougher than that? Well, if it looks something like, should I do this to you? Should I? I'm going to start with a different number. Let's do this one. 9/16 plus 7/16. Nope, I'm not going to do 16ths. That's what makes it more complicated. I'm going 8 on you. Yep. Whew. So take a breather. Because you know what? We're going to estimate first. So let's go pink on this thing. All right, let's do the first one. We're benchmarking it. It's a fraction. It's between 0 and 1. I go to the halfway mark. Half of 16 is 8. And I'm saying, all right, we're working with 9 of them. If I went to one whole amount, I'd be at 16 out of 16. 9 out of 16 is more than half, so it's going to live in this realm. It's just, is it closer to the 8 or is it closer to the 16? Well, 9's closer to 8. So we're going to estimate that with a half. So I'm going to say that 9 over 16 is super close to a half, because we're estimating, we're getting our estimate. And then 7/8, and maybe you can start doing this in your head, but I'm just going to show you. It is a fraction between 0 and 1. I go to that half mark. Half of 8 is 4 out of 8. It's more than half because we're working with 7. If I go to one whole, that's 8 out of 8. So now the question is, 7 is closer to 4 or 8? 8. So it's going to be somewhere over here, closer to 1. So we're going to say 7/8 is about 1. So if we add a half and 1 together, we get 1.5. So we should get an answer. If it's reasonable, it should be close to 1.5. So let's try to find the exact answer. So 9/16 plus 7/8. Okay, we're working in 16ths. How many total? Oh wait, this is not a 16. So now I'm going to have to look at these two denominators and get them to be the same. So you might be like, oh, I could take 16 divided by 2 and get 8. Yeah, but then if I divide 9 by 2, I get a decimal. So that's not going to be good. So I'm going to have to make the 8 get bigger. So let's do multiples of 8 in our head, and I'll write them out here off to the side, that will match up with multiples of 16. So I have 8 is my first one, so we already know we can't use that. Next multiple of 8, 16. Oh, look at that. So I am going to use 16 as my LCD, meaning I'm going to have to multiply this by something to get it to be 16, and that number is 2. But if I do that to the denominator, I need to do the same thing to the numerator. And you might be like, well, what should I multiply this one by? Well, you don't need to multiply it by anything because it's already 16. So once I do that, this fraction is going to be the same value, but just look a little different. So I'm going to have 9 over 16 plus 7 times 2, which is 14, over 8 times 2, which is 16. So now I'm working in 16ths. So I'm going to have a total number of 16ths. And 9 plus 14 would be 23. And now, hopefully, when you see this right here, you're like, oh my gosh, that is more than 16. That is so improper. It's not even funny. Meaning, you should really divide it and get yourself the mixed number. So, because it's more than 1. So we want to see how much more than 1. 16 goes into 23 once. And you're remembering way back that our estimate was 1.5. Oh, and we got it to be 1. We have some left over. 23 minus 16. Maybe you could do that in your head. That is 7. So here I have my mixed number. I just need to be able to write it. It went in one whole time. I had 7 left over, and I was dividing by 16. And you guys, look at how close we got to our estimate. Our estimate was just that good. Because what's half of 16? 8. And look at, we got 7. So our exact answer, our official answer, is super close and reasonable to our estimate. And you know what that means? That means we are amazing. Love, 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 love. Okay, have a good 3-day weekend, and I will see you Tuesday.